So how did you get involved with this panel that's coming up for South by? Like, was this something that someone else like came to you with and was like, would you like to be a part of? Or like, what was that kind of story about?
It's not a very interesting story. Uh, we have a PR person here, and I think this panel reached out to her. I think it's really above average and sort of through above average, the kicker, which is their sort of sports offshoot.
Right. So
Who
Grant Jones from the kicker,
Yeah,
I guess it's him. Okay.
yeah, and Brian Tucker.
Right. And he's listed as being at SNL.
He was at SNL. I don't know if he's still at SNL, but he was at SNL for a long time.
Okay.
I
Gotcha.
think he's full time at the kicker now. But that might just be in the off season. But he's sort of like, I think, sort of the artistic director, sort of creative director over there, and he's great. And I actually had done a bunch of stuff for the kicker before I started here, because I've always really loved sports, and there hasn't been a lot of sports comedy overlap. But we have a PR woman. Her name's Tiger Danger, and they were looking for another person. I know, amazing name. They were looking for another person to be on the panel, and so she suggested me, and then they said okay.
Awesome.
So,
okay. Well, will this be your first time coming to South by, or?
Yeah, I'm really excited. I've heard so much about it, and I've had so many friends go. I'm really excited to go for the first time.
Yeah, it's exciting. This will be my first time going to Interactive, but I've lived in Austin for like 7 years, so I've gone to a couple different things, mainly around music, mainly around the free shows and free booze and free food. So it'll be fun to be more on like an educational level this time.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear about free booze and free food. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Now that you have my contact information, don't hesitate to use it. I'll be more than happy to give restaurant recommendations and anything else I can do to help out.
Totally.
Cool. So let's kind of dive in here with some of those questions I had sent you. And you've kind of already a good transition is mentioning, the role that comedy plays in sports and what you do. Is that, I'm assuming it's safe to assume there'll be humor in this panel. Is that something that y'all are specifically trying to within the power of storytelling, or is that just one kind of part of it?
I think that will be part of it. I don't think that will be the main focus. It probably will be sort of naturally what I talk about, because that's what I do at Bleacher. But I think that will just be a part of it. Although because the kicker and what I do at Bleacher Report are pretty humor focused, I'm sure that'll be a good part of it. We haven't wholly hammered out what's going to happen at our panel yet, but I'm sure there will be some humorous parts of it. And we're supposed to there'll be a video component of it. And I work on Gridiron Heights. I'm a showrunner for that, which is a weekly animated cartoon about the NFL. That's funny. So
I think I've seen some clips from that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks. And so that's what I do mostly day to day. So I will be showing like clips of that. So I think there will be some humorous, at least some, hopefully, funny things.
No, absolutely. Yeah. So for me personally, like I had mentioned, I do Facebook advertising as a profession at the moment. And so I was just curious, is there like a role that social media plays in all this that you guys might highlight? Is that something you assume will be mentioned in the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And social media is huge for BR. Our Instagram and our Twitter and our Facebook and then we just got a Snapchat Discover page that just launched like a couple weeks ago. I mean, all of those are like vital to our business. And that's what we think of. We also have an app, but that like those social channels are like what we create content for, and that's what we think about when we do stuff. So like the Gridiron Heights, we make it a minute long because that's how long we can put it up on Instagram. So like we really,
and that's the attention span of a consumer like me most of the time anyway. So.
Yeah. I know, and every week we get comments that are like, make this a real show. And it's like, it is. It's just a minute. It is a real show. It exists. I promise. You just watched it. But social media is, I think will be a huge part of that, mainly about how we sort of tell stories about sports, but also sort of about how stories, I think, come out of sports. And that's been a big part of it too, is because sports are moving so much further away than just the scores and even just like what happened in the game. But social media is really where it feels like those other things sort of get picked up and spread and become part of our culture is through social media.
Right. And then, going away from comedy, and something that's kind of relevant right now that I follow you on Twitter that I've seen. So it's the political aspect of that, how that's kind of blending into sports and sports reporters. And I think it's been an outcry from certain people being like, reporters should stay in their lane and stick to sports, I think is the trending hashtag. Is that something now, since it's just kind of recently become a major topic, do you think that might make its way into this discussion as well? I know that there's like a whole new government track that they're bringing out to South by this year with like, technology under Trump. So I was just curious if you like, how much, going into the conference, like, are you bringing in, are you like constantly doing research or just kind of go from past experiences? Like what's your prep for South by? I kind of merged two questions in one there, so I apologize.
Yeah, that's okay. I think the landscape in terms of, I'm trying to think of I'll get it all. I think the landscape of what people's lanes are have been dramatically changed by the fact that we have a president whose background is reality TV.
Right, a celebrity.
So for anyone to say that sports reporters should stay in their lane feels a little hypocritical, considering that it feels like our lanes are mixing. But also the idea that any of us are operating in a vacuum is, I think, a really, it's a misconception. There's no way that sports just exist. And I think we see that by how many NBA coaches and players have been asked about this immigration and refugee and Muslim ban that's happening. Like, there's no such thing as staying in your lane anymore. And I think social media only makes that more obvious. That we all of us are connected in sports and politics and entertainment, all are connected too. I'm sure some of the prep that I'll do is I'll have people here tell me, don't say certain things.
Right. Yeah, back to the PR person. Yeah.
There will be I'm sure I will be briefed more than once about stuff to say. But I also think that it's, at this point, for me, feels integral that we do address what's happening in the political landscape in some way, because it's so, I don't think it can be ignored.
Yeah, it's wide sweeping across, there are immigrants who play in all these sports that you're reporting on that it immediately affects, just using that particular, based on the time of this interview. Yeah. So, okay. So that, and then so the second question was just kind of how you're prepping, or, so are you just kind of planning mainly on just speaking from past experience? And in that case, like what kind of drove you into the world of sports? Like is this somewhere that you always wanted to be? I mean, I know it was kind of comedy first, but I mean, you're kind of like living a dream job for me. It's like, comedy, sports, all my favorite things.
Oh my gosh, I'm living a dream job. Yeah, I'm living a dream job for me too. I think how our panel will work is that we're going to have a moderator and we'll ask questions, and we've done a couple of prep sort of phone calls for that, and so we'll do more where I think we probably will hash out the questions and sort of hash out sort of making sure that we have different perspectives on everything. Right. I think like the kicker and what I do at Bleacher Report has a good amount of overlap. So we'll try to sort of make sure that there's still sort of different ideas coming from that. And then with Ace Media, that'll sort of be, I think, sort of more of like a player perspective. So I think we're trying to make sure that we have sort of a holistic vision of what sort of storytelling in sports means right now, but outside of just humor. Which is great, because BR Entertainment, while we do focus on humor, we have a lot of other stuff going on. And also I wrote something for Bleacher Report about Ronda Rousey that was like a very sincere personal essay. So it is like totally, and it was like what she means to me as like a woman and as a fighter. So like that's also way outside of entertainment. So I think we just want to make sure that we're just going to really make sure that we can touch on a bunch of different aspects of storytelling in sports. And so we'll have meetings, and I'm sure we'll have some sort of PowerPoint, something,
Right.
some slides, a deck,
Yeah, somebody's got to have the pointer to click.
Yeah.
So.
I'm sure there will be somebody clicking something. Sports have always been a huge part of my life. I grew up in Chicago.
Okay.
In the 90s.
Cubs fan?
So, what?
Are you a Cubs fan?
I am not.
Okay.
I'm a White Sox fan.
Fair enough. Southside.
Which feels hard to say because I'm very excited for the Cubs, and I think it's great.
It's great for the city, if nothing else. So It was great for the city, even if you're not,
Great for the city.
Right.
Great for the city, and my parents came and visited, and we watched one of the games, the last game right before they got into the World Series together, and it was like very fun. But I'm more of a White Sox fan. But in the 90s in Chicago, the Bulls were like the only thing any of us ever talked about. And I played basketball. I played a bunch of sports, but I played basketball, and so just like growing up in the era of Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen and Rodman and Harper and all of Steve Kerr and all of them, like that was just, that was like, I think you have a question of like, when did sports become more to you? And like for that, like there were like murals on buildings of them. Like they were in every commercial that was ever aired. Like you couldn't go like a day without having like an in-depth conversation about like who your favorite Bulls player was and like what was happening. Like those moments too with my family where we would like watch the games together. And I remember I have an aunt who was having a huge birthday party. Maybe it was like a 40th or 50th birthday party, but it was huge. There were so many people there. It was like this tented thing. It was like this very fancy party. And it was like, ended up being on the night of one of the Bulls like playoff games. And they had to like wheel TVs out. And we all like went and watched. And they had like, it was like in the corner of this really fancy party. And everybody all just like went and watched the Bulls game. And then they like won. And then we were like, okay, now we can like go to the party. But it was like, that's all anybody could do was watch and talk about the Bulls.
Right. And I think that's kind of not ironic. I think it's telling that that was your generation of what you grew up in, because that to me was kind of the beginning of storytelling in sports. Because my MJ did Space Jam and like all this started to merge. He was like the most, I always felt like he gave a lot of access to people. Like, I grew up with being a huge Michael Jordan fan too, because my name's Jordan. And, and so it was, he was just very open in the media. And it was, I don't know, that's when the line began to merge between like, people loved Michael Jordan for more than just basketball. Like, they loved his story, when his father died, like, him going to baseball, like all of it was like that's a story in itself, just his whole career. So that, I don't think that's a coincidence that like, that was your team, and then you ended up now, being in this panel about storytelling and sports, because that was MJ to me. So, that's awesome. So, is there anything beyond what was kind of listed on the, the page, the little blurb written about your panel that you would want people to know beforehand that who are coming, or like what people can expect to take away who come to your panel, or anything like that?
No, I think it'll be a conversation that's bigger than just sports. So even if you're not like a diehard sports fan, that's okay. A big part of who we are at BR is we're moving away from that sort of like idea that, like you have to have like stats memorized and you have to know all the players' names and you have to be super like hardcore, like a certain type of fan to like sports and enjoy like the content and what we're creating around sports, which I think is sort of naturally what this is about how sports is becoming culture and how it's becoming entertainment and outside of just sport. So I would say that like, even if you're not like, you don't feel like a diehard sports fan, don't be turned off by this, by this panel.
Right. Yeah. So someone like me who specifically deals in content and, advertising and social media will be able to take stuff away from this, even if it's not someone who's a diehard Cubs fan.
Totally.
Cool.
And even people who are interested in the idea of storytelling and the idea of trying to find ways to tell stories Because clearly in sports, the easiest story to tell is like what happened in the game and who won. And so it's trying to figure out, and what we do every week with Gridiron Heights in particular is like find the stories outside. We barely ever talk about who wins and loses stuff. It's trying to find the story, like the stories of sort of, and the characters that sort of surround that sport.
Awesome. Well, that makes sense. Well, I'm really excited about it.